Welcome to Calm Down with James Eade. And yes, I'm James Eade. And you might wonder, why am I hosting this show? Well, it's because I want to help humanity, of course. And there may be an ulterior motive, which is I want to sell this book, Freedom. Because part of every show, we're going to have multiple segments on every show, but part of every show is going to deal with addiction and recovery. And when you are free from addiction, you will be able to feel serenity and peace that you never knew before. And so the freedom that you get is tied to the power of choice. When you're under the throes of addiction, you lose the ability to choose. You're compelled to behave in ways that are harmful to yourself and to your loved ones. So no one wants that. No one wants to be an addict. But it can sneak up on you, and people become addicted even without their real awareness that it's happening to them. It can be slow and subtle decline until you're so low you don't know how further down you can go. But however further down you went, you can always come back. And my story is a story of recovery. And this is the book that I wrote, Freedom. And it's your path to recovery, because your path may not be my path, and my path may not be yours. It just doesn't matter. Find your path and walk it with your head held high, looking people in the eye. And one of the things that you do is you learn tools and techniques to calm yourself down, because anxiety was one of the reasons that I would want to change the way I felt. And you can change the way you feel by ingesting foreign substances, but that's the path towards addiction, because it works temporarily. It may work for long periods of time, but eventually you spiral down and you say, how did I get here? What happened? And you can't say, well, on this day I was not an addict and on this day I was. You can't point to any one particular event that changed you from a normal functioning human being to an addict. Now, there's fear and shame associated with calling yourself an addict. But fear and shame are two of the lowest vibrations in the universe. And I never made any good decisions based on fear and shame. I have found that, like all emotions, they don't last. They're not permanent. And now I do not have to ingest foreign substances to change the way I feel, because I know I can just feel my feelings. And I have the tools and techniques that even if they're uncomfortable, I can calm myself down. So part of the show is going to be about how you can do it too. And the one reason that I want to tell people about this is I found that breathing is one of the important things, and not just breathing the way we every day think of breathing. Of course you have to breathe. How are you going to stay alive if you don't breathe? But deep breathing, breathing that's from your diaphragm, breathing in through your nose, out through your mouth. Deep breathing is one of the tools that I have learned that calms me down, because as the mind can calm the body can calm the mind. And when you take a deep breath, you can feel calmer. And if one doesn't work, take two. Two doesn't work, take three. Find what works for you and then practice it. And it may seem uncomfortable at first, it may seem phony, it may seem silly, but it's not. It works. Find what works for you. For me, it's deep breathing. And I find that if I do things first thing in the morning to make myself feel calm, feel secure, feel spiritually fit, then any time during the day when I forget, and my superpower might be forgetting, when I forget and become agitated or anxious again, I know, hey, already once this day I have experienced calmness, serenity, security, and peace. And I can do it again. And the way I do it, what works for me, is to take a deep breath. It could be in through the nose, out through the mouth, in through the nose, out through the nose, in through the mouth, out through the mouth. Whatever works. Find what works for you. And this is one of the things I do, but I talk about spiritual rituals because I try to do them every morning. Some days I don't, and I can usually tell when I don't. My day doesn't go quite as well. But when I do my spiritual rituals, and I'll give you an example, one of them is I give thanks for being reminded to surrender to the moment, to be fully present, right here, right now. Because the past is paralyzed, the future fraught, but the present is a gift. So be here now, remember. And the remembering for me is the hard part. But with practice, I remember more often. The times that I forget are less frequent, and they're of shorter duration, because I can remember to calm myself down whenever I have forgotten what the spiritual rituals mean to me, what they do for me every morning of every day. Because I don't get out of bed spiritually fit. I don't get out of bed calm and secure and serene. So I take walks and I do my rituals and I calm myself down. And when I can do that, and I can, at first it was a little bit forced. And some days, I call it mailing it in. Some days I don't give it my best effort. Some days I don't concentrate while I'm doing it. You know, I'm not perfect, but I've gotten better at this. And when I can do the spiritual rituals, I regain a sense of freedom. I have the power of choice restored to me. I am not compelled to do anything. Maybe obey my wife. She tells me to do something, but generally speaking, I have the power to choose. So when something happens to me, an external event happens to me, I don't just react. I can choose how to respond. And my behavior improves. And it helps not only me, but those in my sphere of influence. And if you can infect the people in your sphere of influence, then who knows, they may affect those in theirs. Who knows where it starts? But if it can, and where it will end, but if it can start with you, why wouldn't you do it? So if I can help people ease their pain and suffering and sell books, I would be very pleased. Because helping others calm down, experience the peace and serenity that I have experienced, which I would have scoffed at, laughed at, if you had told me 10 years ago that this would be my daily experience, then I would choose to do that for myself and for others. And when you see someone else calm down right before your eyes, it's a gift that you give to yourself. It's a wonderful feeling. It's a feeling of joy. And when I was in the throes of addiction, and I did bend my knee to the tyranny of addiction, when I never felt joy, all I could do, the best I could do, was numb myself to feelings so that I didn't feel at all. And my recovery, it was early on in my recovery, it was very difficult for me to identify my feelings. How am I feeling? I don't know. I can't put a name to it. One time I was sitting on my couch and I couldn't name the feeling I was having. It took me minutes, many minutes maybe, to identify it. I was feeling happy. How long had it been since I was last happy? I don't know. However, this is a gift I gave to myself, and I'm asking you to give it to yourself. Go 24 hours without ingesting any foreign substances, without trying to change the way you feel by eating, by drinking, by smoking, by vaping, by doing anything that you normally do. Go 24 hours. See if you can do it. And if you can do 24, you can do another 24. And so what I've been taught and what I practice is to do it one day at a time. And what works for me is to start my day a particular way so that I become calm, spiritually fit, and secure. Because I was insecure. And in our society, you're often told that it's not good for men to admit that they're insecure. And society's not doing us a favor there, because if we can admit we were insecure, then we can take steps to make us feel secure. And when we're secure, then we don't have to act out. We don't have to take on responsibility for others' behaviors. We don't have to do the types of things that we have been doing, trying to control the environment, trying to control what other people think. All of those things no longer seem so important because you feel safe and secure. You do not feel threatened. And so when we're threatened, we respond in primitive ways, pointing to my amygdala. And when we respond in primitive ways, and for many years, that's all I knew, was to go down the same neural network and result in behavior that was not good for me or good for others. And I've learned in my recovery to pick the needle up and move it to a new neural network. And over again, I've done that. Pick the needle up. Because at first it's uncomfortable, it's scratchy, and it does not play a beautiful song. But over time, the groove is worn, and the song is sweeter than ever. This is the promise I make to you. You can do this too. However you use your imagery, it doesn't have to be a needle that you pick up and move. It can be anything that works for you. And when you can do it, you will find that your behavior as a result changes, and you've restored the power of choice in how you want to respond, rather than being compelled to react. Now, we're coming up on a time where we're going into another segment, and it's my senior correspondent. He lives in Los Angeles, and his name is Rick Rosner. And is Rick available for us? I think he is now.
Yes, he is. Here we go.
Okay, Rick. Welcome to Calm Down with James Eade. I'm James Eade. You're Rick Rosner, senior correspondent. And I was wondering, what is it today that's making you agitated in the news?
All right. What gets me worked up is I get annoyed with what makes me horny and evolution in general. So the deal is that, we are like the billionth generation of organisms that have perpetuated their species via sex. So, we have a huge libido, a huge sex drive, which is not your friend. Most of the time, your brain is looking at the world around you and making decisions that benefit you, helping you make good decisions. But when it comes to sex, you're not working for yourself. You're working for the species. And when you look at all the guys who've gotten into sex trouble, you can see that sometimes, a lot of the time, your libido is not working for you. And, I'm 64. I've been jerking off for almost 55 years. I started early because I was nerdy. I didn't have sports to distract me. But, I get really annoyed with what makes me horny, boobs and butts, which is ridiculous. I've been married, I've been with my wife since 1986. Same boobs and butts, and my wife doesn't even particularly like her boobs being touched. But why? Why does my brain have to tell me that I have to look at, everybody's butts at the gym? And, when everybody's, my wife is asleep, I got to go online and look at boobs and butts on the internet. It's stupid. There was a science fiction novel, the Diamond Age by Neil Stephenson, set 200 years in the future, and there's a cult of mathematicians who've learned to reprogram their libido. So what gives them boners instead of boobs and butts is making mathematical discoveries, which would be great. It would be great to be able to, I think eventually we might be able to
excited
reprogram
now. I'm thinking about it.
Ourselves, to get, orgasms are great. They're they're the only thing that give you a blast of endorphins that won't kill you. It's a feeling that's, almost as good, I guess, as heroin or fentanyl, but those things will F you up. But in general, I'm not happy with evolution because, in addition to making us crazy with sex drive, for one thing, evolution doesn't have an agenda. It's not a thing, a god or anything. It's just what has happened to work across billions of years. And it doesn't give a crap, since it can't, that it sets us up to want to keep on living, but it leaves us to watch ourselves across 30, 40, 50 years fall into decay. So F you, sex drive, and F you, evolution.
Well, Rick, you're absolutely right. It seems to be a primitive, long-standing instinct in men. And what I think of is, what are you looking at a woman's butt for? And your evolutionary path is telling you that you're looking for childbearing characteristics. Who's going to be a suitable mate? So if a woman has a butt that you think is attractive, it's basically because you think that she would bear children well. And, the boobs obviously are necessary to feed the child. So it is an evolutionary
also
instinct.
There's a theory that, that before humans were human, when we were apes, we did it doggy style. And so we could be looking at the butt, but then we started doing it face to face. And so women evolved boobs in the front. So we would, a front butt, boobs that are shaped. So we would have a butt to look at even when we're face to face. It's all ridiculous.
Yeah. The way you put it makes me feel kind of ashamed of myself for thinking like I've been thinking about this is just, what is the attraction? What is it based? And I've thought about it in terms of you want to propagate the species. And it seems natural to me that you would want to do that. But it's not necessary. There are so many people that I know that are childless, but you still have that sex drive. And what I want to know is when you find yourself worked up about this kind of thing, what do you do to calm yourself down?
Well, you can tell where this is going. Of course, I calm myself down by jerking off, and then I fall asleep for an hour.
Okay. All right. So we're not recommending that as your go-to, but if it works for you.
Well, especially, if you're out in public.
There are social norms that we must observe, whether we like it or not, and that might be one of them. And
though what's happening is people are having less sex,
yes,
and fewer babies,
yes,
and that may actually save the world. That the peak humanity has been moved up when we're going to have the most humans ever on the planet. And then from then on, it's going to go down. We're so distracted with entertainment, and there's so much that people are just not going to the trouble of coupling up anymore.
Well, that seems
so
to be
it's
true.
been moved up from the year 2100 to the year 2060, which is good in terms of climate change and stuff like that.
Well, it seems to be true in the United States. We've often blamed like social media and, constantly on your phone, people texting each other even when they're walking together or talking to each other on their phones while they're together. But, this is true in China, Japan as well. There's a tendency for people to not be as focused on having children as my parents were in their generation. It was unquestioned in their generation. And in my generation, they questioned it. And now the younger people are feeling less secure about their future.
Yeah, because olds have all the money. In the U.S., people 45 and older have 15 out of every $16 in circulation. Yeah. 94% of privately held assets belong to the olds. And so everybody's got in the 50s, a lot of people could look forward to, getting a halfway decent job and moving into a starter home. Yeah. Now the Gen X's and millennials are in, crappy studio apartments.
Right. Because how do you get started? I've often wondered this. Like, I live in the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area, and the home prices, I have always said, I thought they added an extra zero by mistake. How do you get started in that kind of environment? So it's got to be discouraging.
Move in, you share an apartment with 6 other web developers.
Right. Or you wait on tables and you can afford what you can afford, which is almost nothing unless you share it with others and pool your resources.
Or you live in your car.
Yeah, which people do. And I'm afraid that, growing up in the 60s and 70s, I was like thinking that, my future was bright. But I encounter people today and they think that their future is going to be worse than their present. And so why would you be so motivated to bring children into a world that's getting worse? So
Also, there's just more, like in the 70s. We both are 70s kids.
yeah,
And the 70s kind of sucked. Entertainment kind of, there were only three channels, but now there's 800, there's hundreds of channels,
and there's still only a few
800
things to
TV
watch.
series on the air, social media out the butt. And it's hard to couple up. When I wanted a girlfriend, I had to get contact lenses. I had to learn how to make my hair look less stupid. I lifted weights. I worked on talking to girls. It's tough, but that was the only way to have some kind of life, I thought. But now, that there are incels, involuntary celibates,
Right.
but they're really voluntary. They're guys who take a look at the landscape and how tough it would be to get a girlfriend, and they're happy just to, be pursuing their interests, their shows, their graphic novels, their video games.
Dungeons and Dragons.
When they feel horny, they look at porno instead of trying to get a girlfriend.
Right. And so when we talk like this, we can get worked up, we can get agitated, we can get a little bit anxious about the future. But what we want to do, in my opinion, see if you agree with me on this, is try to stay in the present and think about what's going on right now. What can I do to change my behavior? And what can you do? You're obviously married and monogamous relationship. The variety you get is on the internet.
All right, so here's where I'm lucky. I'm in the Writers Guild, and we have really good coverage, which includes mental health services.
Absolutely.
And
great.
That includes couples counseling. And my wife and I have been in couples counseling for more than 30 years.
Wow.
Not because we're always yelling at each other, but because it's just relationship maintenance. And my thinking is that your libido tricks you into dumping your old wife and getting a new, younger wife because it would be easier to have an orgasm with somebody new and exciting. But if you do a reasonable analysis, you realize you're going to lose half of your assets in the divorce.
Right.
You're going to wreck your family. You're going to make yourself miserable, your wife and kids miserable.
But you're not thinking rationally at that stage. You're not thinking with your big brain.
So what I do is I try to look at ways to make my wife happier, and she does the same thing. It helps that we both have low self-esteem. If we were both cocky mofos, the cockier you are, the more you think you can find a new person easily. So it's good to have low self-esteem because you work on your current relationship.
Or your
here's another thing. Here's another thing I do when I get worked up.
Okay.
I tweet angry stuff about the GOP. I go on Twitter because Project 2025, which is Trump's platform from the Heritage Foundation.
Oh yes, I know the Heritage Foundation.
It's 900 pages long, and it's got so much craziness in it. And one of their platforms is no more abortion for any reason, no contraception. No porn. They want to make pornography illegal. Basically, they want to make jerking off illegal. They want to what they say is they want to return sex to its serious procreative purpose. That is, that they want to stop you from having sex unless there's a chance that sex will knock somebody up, which is horrifying. The GOP used to be against big government, and now they want to be all in on your computer. They want to be in your bedroom. They don't want you to put your hand down your pants. So I will tweet about that, and that'll make me feel like I've done, a little something.
Yeah. So doing something, taking action, even if it makes a fairly insignificant contribution to society, it does raise your self-esteem. And so this can be one technique, one tool to get into action, to do something about whatever it is that you're agitated about. And yes, the idea of making women, not giving them ability to have contraceptives and not allowing abortion. So you're going to have women who are unprepared to have children, and then you're not going to support them either, because then you're going to think that they were
Well, so
wanton.
it's not just women who are unprepared to have children, because a huge percentage of women having abortions are women who already have children. So they're prepared to have the children they have.
Right.
They're not prepared to screw over themselves and their families by bringing extra kids in at this point.
Or that's a good point, a great point, Rick. Or they could be very young and not ready to take the steps that are necessary for motherhood. And, these types of people, they need contraceptives so that they don't get pregnant, because telling them not to have sex just doesn't seem to work. So, the idea that we can tell them what to do and give their morality and instill ancient kinds of religious tenets into their minds, it seems to be impractical. And then you're going to be resulting in a society that has lots of unwanted children who grow up knowing that they were unwanted and are just not able to have lives that are filled with quiet dignity.
Well,
and where they
I haven't seen a study on this, but I would bet that your odds of getting into college and your odds of success in later life are inversely proportional to the number of siblings you have.
Interesting.
Because when you have just a couple kids or one kid, you have more resources to focus on that kid. When you think of helicopter parents, who are really focused on helping their kids, make it in life, you don't think of helicopter parents having like 8 kids.
That's true. Although the helicopter parents may be some good, some bad. But how many siblings did you have, Rick?
It was the 70s, so I had 4 siblings, but nobody had the same 2 parents, because everybody was just getting married and divorced and, married to somebody else.
Is this an LA thing, Rick?
No, this was Colorado and New Mexico. So I have a half brother on my mom's side, half sister on my dad's side, an adopted step on my dad's, and an ex step on my dad's side.
I get you. Very, very complex. So do you feel that you were not shown attention or you did not get the resources you needed growing up?
No, I got them, except that parenting wasn't a word yet.
Yeah.
And
they weren't trained on how to do it.
My Albuquerque family was chaotic. And my Boulder family was depressed. This is stuff that I didn't figure out till decades later, but we were
same here.
Everybody did their best for everybody in my Boulder family, but we all had the sads.
Yeah, that's very, and I think it's something that we should not be ashamed to talk about. Growing up in a dysfunctional family, it's not something that's shameworthy or that you want to avoid. You want to accept it, know it, feel it.
Well, it was good for me because I had 2 different families with visitation, 11 months of the year with the sad family, 1 month a year with the chaotic family. And it taught me different ways of being. And maybe, like, I've been married now for 33 years.
Yeah.
And it made me want to do a better job of it than maybe, my parents had. My wife, even more so, she feels like she didn't get what she wanted from her mom, and that has made her like just an insanely not a helicopter mom, but just a super conscientious mom.
Okay. And how many children does she have?
We have 1.
1. Okay. So you're able to devote the resources and attention necessary to raise that child.
Yeah. Also, if you want to pass on generational wealth, it's easier to do if you don't have a ton of siblings fighting it out.
All right, Rick. Well, thank you very much for coming in from LA via
Surely.
Zoom to join us today. And
I'll see you next week.
And we'll see you next week. Great job, Rick.
Thank you.
Do you want to plug anything?
Does Rick want to plug anything?
Sure. You can look at my angry stuff on Twitter at Dumbass Genius is my name.
Dumbass Genius. I love it.
And then where's your art? It's on your wife's Instagram page.
Micro, MICRO _niceties, NICETIES.
Okay. Thanks for my producer there doing my job for me.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. So the next segment of the show, many thanks to our senior correspondent from LA, Rick Rosner, is going to be I talked last week about affirmations, and he's going to speak a little bit about affirmations, but he's also going to speak about the yamas and niyamas. And the yamas and niyamas, he did a really good job, I thought, explaining what they are last week. And today he's going to tell us he's going to focus on one particular yama, which is a don't do. And I tell him, of course, I got that backwards. I thought the yamas were the things to do and the niyamas were things you don't do, but it's I was backwards thinking on that. So Yudihisthira is going to tell us about the first yama today. So if we can spool up whatever, put in a new reel. I'm flashing back on my old days.
And away we go.
Okay. Yudihisthira is up.
Welcome to this segment of the show. Calm down. And we're going to talk about yamas and niyamas. And when I first heard about yamas and niyamas, I assumed yamas were the things you're supposed to do and niyamas were the things you shouldn't do. But I had it backwards. So I'm going to bring on Yudihisthira to tell me about the first yama, the things you're not supposed to do. At least that's my understanding. So did I get that right, Yudihisthira?
You did get it right. It's as good of an introduction as I could have hoped for in terms of, well, not getting it right, because one of the realities about the yamas and niyamas and putting them into practice is that, especially at first, we get it wrong a whole lot more than we get it right.
Yeah.
But it actually, it's a good segue into ahimsa. Jim, you'll remember that there were actually 5 yamas and 5 niyamas. They are oftentimes referred to as the 10 commandments of yoga. And they actually do overlap in some places.
Sure.
It's not wrong. It's only to say that the
thou shalt not steal.
Yes, exactly. And they don't overlap exactly, but basically they are about the golden rule. That is, how do I behave in a way that I want others to behave towards me?
Right.
And that's really the essence of the 10 Commandments. How do I behave well in the world and in a way that is pleasing to however I view the divine?
Yes.
And one of the things I wanted to begin with today in terms of this is that a person has to be ready to change before she or he is able to do any of these yamas or niyamas.
That's my experience. The willingness has to be there.
There has to be something that clicks. Next time that we record and talk about Satya, which is non-lying, I'll tell a very personal story about that, which is instructive, because the yamas and niyamas are not meant to be simply taught and learned and remembered in a mental way.
Right.
They require this awareness of the difference between who I am as a personality, my tendencies, the foods I like, the people I tend to hang out with, the music I listen to. Those are all aspects of our personality. And there is another level of awareness, which in yoga is referred to as self, with a capital S, self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So you could have small s self-awareness and have it be, well, I'm aware of the things I like and don't like in the world.
Yes.
People I get along with, things like that. And it's not that one is bad and one is good. It isn't that. It's simply that most people get caught up in the personality of who they are and are not able to make that expanded awareness that they are more than the body they're in. They're more than the things they like or don't like, more than their political affiliations or restaurants that they prefer,
Right.
the diet they keep. None of those things are really the truth of who we are. And that's where the capital S self-awareness comes in. But the interesting thing is, Jim, is that there's it's like a very, very slow grind that gradually through our lifetime, we begin to learn what works and what doesn't work. And we begin to realize that some things do not work. And so we begin to control our outward behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And with ahimsa in particular, and let me back up and say ahimsa is perhaps the best known of all of the yamas and niyamas. And I say that because of a rather famous guy named Mahatma Gandhi, Mohandas K. Gandhi.
Yeah.
And he made ahimsa famous basically as a means of liberating India from British rule.
Right. Absolutely.
And so it's gotten a lot of attention.
Right.
He, ironically, this is the interesting thing, that ahimsa, that is that attitude of non-harmlessness, does not necessarily mean that there isn't hostility or violence around you.
Right.
It means that you are able to operate in a place that regardless of the hostilities of others, that you are able to respond with kindness and blessing and love. And that is a lot of work to do.
Well, I'm going to let you go solo,
Okay.
but I will tell you that I may have been the only sixth grader to own and wear a Nehru jacket. But I'm going to let you take it away and teach us about ahimsa, non-harmfulness. I had to look at my notes.
All right. Well, so, friends, I have to tell you that my entire career of teaching yoga for the last 35 years, one of the key characteristics is that I don't look like a yoga teacher. And I don't have anything that has Lululemon anywhere on it in my wardrobe. And that's a good thing because of the fact that, first of all, I would not be very attractive in Lululemon, leggings. But in addition, there is the reality that most of yoga is not about yoga postures. Yoga postures themselves are absolutely phenomenal because they give us a chance on a little bit of real estate that we call a yoga mat. And we get a chance to practice to mirror daily life in ways that we can actually control. We have the chance to free ourselves from outside influences that we don't have any control over. People coming at us with attitudes, people coming at us with questions. Maybe they're good questions, but nonetheless, there's a lot of them. And there's just this ability that we have on a yoga mat to actually control what we do. So I teach a weekly yoga class on Zoom. I don't teach a whole lot of physical yoga anymore. But when I teach this yoga class on Zoom, every week I use a particular quality. And one of those weekly qualities that we hit once a year, because there's 52 of them, is from a book, I don't know if I showed it last week, called Affirmations for Self-Healing. And Affirmations for Self-Healing includes one weekly teaching on this quality of ahimsa, but it is never using the word ahimsa. We need to understand what ahimsa actually refers to. And there's different levels of ahimsa. And this is the thing, that someone can outwardly be causing no harm. And that's essentially what ahimsa means, non-harming. One can be outwardly, of course, not breaking things, not hitting people, perhaps not even speaking angrily or meanly to them. That doesn't mean that the practice of ahimsa has been perfected. And so this brings me back to what I was mentioning with Jim a few moments ago, is that we have to begin with something that catalyzes an awareness within ourselves. Oftentimes, I'll speak from my personal experience and say that it was the experience of causing harm to others and then having a period of change in my life when I reflected on the harm I had caused to others, many of them who really cared about me deeply, and yet I had nonetheless, through my own actions, my own behaviors, caused harm. And so this idea of coming to this realization is not a matter of choosing to not hit people. It is a matter of beginning to change yourself from the inside out. So ahimsa, again, in English, it comes out as non-harming or non-injury. It was pointed out to me at one point by a teacher, a mentor of mine, that she had read that the original 10 commandments in Aramaic, I guess it would have been in originally, were if you translated them directly, they became no kill, and or no, and you fill in the blank for the other commandments, no covet, or no stealing. So the same is true of the yamas. So ahimsa is no harm. It doesn't say no harm in the world around you by your physical being. It rather requires that you begin to work at layers below that level of outward, what is obvious. And so there are more subtle layers of ahimsa, and those are layers of our thoughts and our feelings. And I can tell you that for myself, after decades of practicing these yamas and niyamas in my life, that I've gotten better, but I still have little spikes of irritation and anger that occur within me when I really had no control over it. But I can notice it, and that's where that capital S self-awareness comes in. I am now aware of when I have that moment, and I have tools that allow me to change that reaction. This idea of reacting is going to be a recurring theme in terms of our, these little short teachings I'm going to share with you about the yamas and niyamas. That's to say that there's always going to be an outward appearance of it, and then there's going to be other levels of truth to it. And that's where the real work comes in. It doesn't really matter what tradition one comes from. There will be some version of the yamas and niyamas. The yamas and niyamas themselves appear both in all of the Sanskrit-based religions of the world. Hinduism, Jainism, Sikhism, Buddhism, they all tend to stem from the same original resources, including these essential teachings. What changes as you move outward is what becomes dogma. One of the things I appreciate about the path of yoga and in applying these principles is that they don't require any particular affiliation with any particular church or organization in order to practice them. That being said, there are some organizations with whom it is helpful to be aligned because the people around you, the culture of people around you, help support you, so that when it comes to this practice of ahimsa, causing non-harming, I live in a place called the Ananda community in Mountain View, California. And I am surrounded by people where I live, where I teach school at Living Wisdom School, and where I am a minister and a member of the Ananda Sangha or Ananda Church of Self, capital S, realization. And so my life is surrounded by people who are abiding by these same higher principles and always working within themselves. Now, that idea about working on yourself, again, is not exclusive to anything about yoga. The idea about working on oneself, my dad he had mystical inclinations. And at one phase in his life, he ended up studying a couple of Russian mystics, G.I. Gurdjieff and P.D. Uspensky. And, there was this picture that came out of, I don't know which guy it was. These guys were very mental. It was a little bit dry, but nonetheless, the essence was the same guidance that I'm sharing with you. None of this is original to me. Everything I've learned from my guru, the guy over that shoulder. There we go. And everything I've learned has been through his teachings in some way, Paramhansa Yogananda. But to know that our behavior it ends outside of ourselves in our body, but it begins with a thought and feeling. And so there are tools that we can use that are actively good at weeding out the reactions that we tend to have, that we've acquired in yoga terms, not only within this lifetime, but from other lifetimes, reactions to certain events, certain situations, certain people, reactions that have been built so deeply within us that it takes a very bright light of self-awareness in order to be able to identify, there is a source within my heart, a feeling that arises that makes its way up into my brain and becomes a thought, and that then is very easily translated into a physical act. For example, if someone says something to me offensive about my mother, and that rises, it begins as a feeling in my heart because I love my mother. It rises into my thought as an anger thought. And if I'm that sort of a person, I can then translate that feeling and anger thought into a physical blow. And all of that will have happened without even any level of self-reflection. So what I'm suggesting to you is that through a specific practice of nonviolence with self-awareness, you can begin to stop reacting physically and trace it back and begin to remove the thought and then remove the anger feeling in your heart. So I wanted to share a couple of useful tools rather than just talking about these things. Let me share a couple of useful tools. In Ananda Yoga, the style of yoga that I teach and train other people in and practice as yoga therapist, one of the basic principles, or basic yoga postures rather, is one of a seated twist. So if you can imagine sitting cross-legged, picking up your left leg, planting your left foot on the outside of your right thigh, bringing your right hand over to your left thigh, you lengthen, and then you rotate. So you're looking over your left shoulder. And so your heart is wide open on the side of your body that you've opened. And everything else is pushing energy down to your heart and energy up to your heart. And it feels really, really compressed right here in the heart center. And your eyes can close or open. But here's the affirmation. I radiate love and goodwill to soul friends everywhere. I radiate love and goodwill to soul friends everywhere. The way these affirmations work, you don't need to be in a yoga posture to use them, but the way these affirmations work is to say them first, and it can be either mentally or aloud. You say it loudly, almost like shouting it. You say it in a more conversational tone. You say it in a lower tone, in a whisper, and then mentally only. And as you begin to repeat the affirmation, I radiate love and goodwill to soul friends everywhere, rather than having it be an outward act of the words coming out of your mouth. And rather than being a thought in your mind, bring it down to the heart and let the heart's voice be saying the affirmation. I radiate love and goodwill to soul friends everywhere. And so in the heart, we can begin to give the affirmation our deep feeling. And so it becomes a very powerful tool. I radiate love and goodwill to soul friends everywhere. I invite you, I won't quite say challenge, but if you feel like you want something, a tool to use, try that affirmation, and you can use it endlessly, continuously, like a background throughout the day. And notice that your reactions may change. I want to give you one more tool, but before I end with that last tool, which I'll share with you, is called the Peace and Harmony Prayer. Before I do that, I wanted to say that every one of the yamas, niyamas, manifests itself in different levels. And when it is perfected, the Yoga Sutras, here's a book I probably showed you last week, Demystifying Patanjali. These are sometimes Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. And this is where these limbs of yoga come in, and the yamas and niyamas are part of those 8 limbs. And when it comes to perfection of ahimsa, the perfection of ahimsa is that hostilities cease, violence ends right around you. Now, this gets into some slippery territory, because if you take any great saint or teacher or prophet from any tradition, you will almost inevitably find that their lives ended in violence, or that there was violence around them many times. Gandhi's an example of it. But if you have read his biography, you know that when he was assassinated, that his final words, as nearly as I could tell, were saying God, God, God. He said, I think, Ram, 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 just another word for God. Christ, Jesus, the Christ. The Christ was his title. It wasn't who he was. He was the Christ. Krishna had the same consciousness, or has the same consciousness. But what were Jesus's final words on the cross? Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. He continued to have this attitude of nonviolence, even as he had the ultimate violence committed against him. But he did not identify with it. Gandhi did not identify with it. And so that represents a level of perfection. There are examples of many stories. I'd point you to the autobiography of a yogi for a number of specific stories about ahimsa, including Yogananda's guru, Sri Yukteswar, who is said to have been able to have deadly cobras come into his presence. And because Yukteswar had no animosity, these snakes became harmless in his presence. So I wanted to end today by sharing with you what's called a peace and harmony prayer. Here's my suggestion for using it. The prayer is simple. You repeat you repeat 3 times this: Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. So for every 4 times you say that, 1 time you say, Lord, fill me with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. There are a number of ways to break this down. You can do 10 times for the world, 3 times for yourself, 1 minute for the world, 15 seconds for yourself, whatever works for you. But here's a basic practice. And so I'm going to actually do it with you, and I'll repeat it 10 times for the world and then 3 times for myself. Now, here's another secret. It doesn't have to be for the world. If you're in conflict with someone in your family, your workplace, whoever it might be, someone who has had road rage on the car on your way to work, cut you off, whatever it is, simple things. But here's a way to counteract it, and we'll end with this tool. So again, I encourage you right now, if you're watching this, go ahead and sit upright, relax your shoulders, and go ahead and feel free to repeat aloud with me. Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill me with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill me with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill me with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. And so blessings, friends, in peace and harmony. And I will look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you, Yudihisthira. That was my friend, the yoga instructor that I met at Ananda, which is in Palo Alto, California. And we have gotten to become friends. And he was generous with his time to help me understand, and us perhaps understand, the yamas and niyamas a bit better, and how we can use this ancient wisdom in our everyday lives and transfer it from the old times where they were originally documented and preserved to the modern times that we live in. And so it's all about achieving peace and serenity. And I have used the prayer that he suggests in this time, the peace and harmony prayer, multiple times. It's often, I use it with people who are going through medical issues, they're struggling, they're maybe not in their best spirits. I often use it then. I've often employed it with people that I'm not getting along with, and I'm wishing them peace and harmony. And it changes the way I think. It changes the way I think about them. It makes me a more compassionate human being. And the compassionate human being that I become is more in line with the type of person I want to be. So these are tools and techniques that we can use to modify our everyday existence so that our behavior is more aligned with what we want it to be. And I don't want to behave like a jerk. Sometimes I do. So how do I become more capable of being less jerky, less often, And it's doing things like practicing these little affirmations, practicing these little prayers, practicing these little rituals that I have. Now, these rituals that I've developed, they're not in a book, they weren't online. I did it through a process of trial and error. I noticed what was agitating me and I would work on it. I would say something that was a positive affirmation or something, or a little prayer to help me deal with this. And I would ask help. I would surrender to the moment, as we went in earlier. Different things for different problems. And I would often find myself no longer needing them. And so I would dismiss them. They no longer served. The problem that I was struggling with has gone away. It's resolved itself. And I've added new ones as new challenges arise. So nothing is set in stone. You can add and subtract, but it's your inner resonance is going to be your guide. Does it help you? Keep it. Does it not? Maybe it doesn't serve. So let it go. So this has been Calm Down with James Eade, live out of Edge Studio in San Francisco. And the reports of San Francisco's demise are greatly exaggerated. San Francisco is alive and thriving. And Edge Studio's been generous with their time, giving me the opportunity to talk to you about the things that I want to talk about. And one of them is to buy this book. The Freedom book that I wrote is all about finding your path to recovery. And it's not just for people who are suffering from addiction. It's those that have people that have addiction in their lives, because it's a family affair when addiction affects, because it affects not only the addict, but all those who love them, all those who are in their sphere of influence. So by all means, buy the book. And if you want to give a review on Amazon, buy it from Amazon. But Barnes and Nobles can also be a resource, and you can find it in other places. Whatever your bookstore of choice is, I hope they carry it. But right now, we're going to close. Divya Love Rise is also someone I met at Ananda. Ananda is a yoga studio, which is how I first got there, and also a temple, a spiritual place, speaking about life wisdom. And I've learned a great deal, and I'm happy with my association with that. And so Divya will take us out and tell us how to calm down.
Welcome to the final segment of Calm Down. And I want to introduce to you, my loyal listeners and viewers, Divya Love Wise, that wise yogi. And I would like you, at the end of every show, I'm a little bit agitated and worked up and all that kind of stuff. And I was wondering if there's something that you could do to calm me down. Could you just say goodbye to us in any way that you see fit?
Sure, I would love to.
I will take off and let you do that. Thanks again.
Okay. Well, bring yourself into a comfortable seated position, feeling your feet on the floor and letting your hands rest in your lap. Palms up or palms down is a great way to start bringing yourself back into center and focus with your own divine energy and letting go of anything that might have wanted to stick to us throughout the day that may be energy we don't want to carry throughout the day. So having this basic position, feeling grounded, even closing your eyes and taking a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And one of the ways we can bring ourselves back to center is observing with our senses what we can feel, the temperature of the air in the room, observing any sounds that you hear. Noticing any smells in the air. And then bring your awareness to your breath. As though you're watching it from the inside out. watching the inhale wash into the body and watching the exhale wash out of the body, just like the waves of the ocean as they wash onto the shore. And if you find your mind still wandering, you can even place one hand on your lower belly and one hand on your heart so that you can feel with your hands this breath washing in and washing out. And with your mind's eye, visualize this inhalation and exhalation as an internal shower, clearing away your energy so that it's refreshed, it's rejuvenated, and it's restored. Releasing your hands into your lap, just give yourself a few seconds of pause in this return to peace, enjoying it. When you are ready, you can open your eyes, wiggling your fingers and your toes, feeling grounded in your body, grounded in the best part of yourself, and you can go out into the world and carry that best part in the forefront of your mind and your heart.